We've come to a point where driving a Kia is not the same as it used to be. We'll take a look at this XCeed from Kia, which is a plug-in hybrid today. And it comes in 3 different versions. This one is the Vision version, which is the lowest one, but it has a couple of different features in it, which is just elevates it a little bit more. This is going to cost you around 35,990 euros, but with the options, it's going to be around $1,000 more. There's the Vision, the Spirit, and also the Platinum editions, which are all listed on the left side over there for you. And what we're going to do is just look at it, how the hybrid works, and if it looks good, and if it's worth your money, and if you should get it. So enjoy the video, and we'll get right into the exterior right now. The first thing we're going to look at is the exterior. We're going to walk you around it and look at all the small details that you might not be able to see in the first little bit. So first of all, we have the new Kia logo up here, which is typical on all new Kias nowadays. You can also notice that it's a hybrid. Well, first of all, in Germany with your E logo on, or E letter on the side of the license plate, but also with this intake right here, which is actually not an intake, but it's a diamond-shaped kind of intake, which doesn't actually intake anything. But down here it does, which is the radiator. It's also in the same shape, but apart from it being fully covered, it's not fully covered, and there's intakes that you can actually have in there. Also, you have these little plastic bits down here, which are just look nice. I also like the bottom lip there, which looks pretty nice. On the side, we have our LED headlights, which is just a typical Kia model with the like bent backwards, kind of like really fully stretched to the back, which look like they're going to go all around the car if you look from the front, but they just go up like, how much is that, like 20 centimeters, which is pretty massive. And then down here we do have intakes, which actually provide some aerodynamic features towards the wheel, because they actually go through and then give you, or they provide air and then they go out on the kind of wheel area there. That's basically the front. You also have the hood up here. We'll go into the engine a little bit later and look at that. Let's move on over to the side, where we have our typical wheels, which are 16 inches on the Vision model. If you get the Platinum, you're going to get 18-inch wheels. These are 16-inch light metal wheels with winter tires on, even though it's 20 degrees outside right now. Up here we have our electric charging port, which is going to provide you around 60 kilometers of range. And it's also going to take around 2.5 hours to charge, because it's only a Type 2 battery charger, so it takes a little bit for that to charge. Up here we have our automatic side mirrors. So they retract automatically when you close the car. There's a lot of standard features in this car, which I absolutely love. And then moving further down, the only thing that's the same to the normal Ceed is actually this left side door, which you can just take off and plug it into a normal Ceed. Everything else on the chassis is completely different. Also, you have your little black side bobs, or side, whatever they call them, up here, and they also go around the wheel and everything like that. Just looks a little bit nicer. Up here we have our normal tank, which is going to give you around 50 liters in volume in here, and that's going to provide you with a lot of range, up to around 600 to 700 kilometers when you combine everything together. Because it's like, if you drive really good, you can get the fuel usage down to around 3 liters per 100 kilometers, which is pretty nice. And then we're going to go on to the rear, because that is basically it for the side. We again have our long stretched lights, or rear lights, which, just like in the front, they go pretty far back. Up here, because it's off, and moving further to the back, we obviously have the crossover SUV type, which is the main model of this XCeed, which is a crossover SUV coupe kind of thing. So in my opinion, it kind of looks like a GLA, like those old GLA versions, which looks pretty nice. I didn't really like the GLA, but I think this just makes it look a little bit nicer when you compare it to the GLA, obviously. Up here you have your little kind of spoiler, which extends further back, and with your braking light in the back. Then again, the new Kia logo up here, and also the XCeed to show you that it's the X version as well. Up here, again, our lights and also your trunk, which is pretty nice. We'll look at that in a second. Down here we have our fake exhausts, which, like I said, I hate fake exhausts, but I think in this car they don't actually look that bad, because they just give it a little bit nicer like kind of view when you look at it from the back. But we have one exhaust on the bottom right here, which is plenty of enough. But again, it's just, you think it's gonna look nice, you can have big exhaust, but then it's just like, oh, well, there's nothing in there. Let's take a look what the trunk offers for us. So you just go under it and then you open it up. What we have in here is 270 liters of trunk space, and if you remove this up here, you have around 380 liters. The thing is, The back, jeez. The front of this is, well, you can't put stuff under there, but the way the car is laid out, there's an electric battery right down here, which you can actually remove and look at. And then there's also one behind the rear passenger seats. So that's your 2 batteries that you have in here. And then you have your 2 cables in here, and also a little bit of a battery back here, which you can easily remove. Other than that, obviously it's a little bit smaller than the normal Ceed because it has the battery in here, and also it's kind of like a crossover thing. So there's going to be less storage in there compared to the normal Ceed. That's the back. Let's take a look at the rear seats. Okay, taking a look in the back. So what we have in here is plenty of room, in my opinion. Up front, the seat is adjusted to my likings, and also I'm sitting back here with 1.80 m of height, and I have around, what is that, like 7 centimeters of space above me. So a person of 1.87 m up to 1.90 m can easily sit in here. You got plenty of leg room as well. Surprisingly big, actually, when you're considering that it's a crossover, and from the outside it looks pretty small, because it's actually the same height, or actually 2 centimeters smaller than Volkswagen Up, which is pretty mind-blowing. Because those things are tiny. So what we have in here is some nice seats. They're pretty comfortable. You could probably sit in here for a couple of hours. Up here you also have a nice little storage space where you can put some 2 cup holders or 2 bottles in there with good amount of space, and not those hexagon kind of shapes that I hate. On the side we do have a little bit of a piano finish, which I'm not a big fan of because you easily get scratches on there. But I think it's pretty minimalistic when it comes to that throughout the whole car, just in the front a little bit. We'll look at that in a second. Down here we also have a 2-zone, well actually 1-zone climate control, but with 2 kind of like the zones, but it only regulates 1. Down here we have a pretty good speaker from a pretty good size. The quality up here is not the greatest, just your typical kind of like plastic material kind of mix with some pretty interesting choice up there. But then down here it gets a little bit nicer. You obviously have your automatic windows, which don't work because the car's not on. But that is basically the gist from the back. Then also up there you have a light, and that is basically it. Plenty of space, so let's go into the front and let's check that out. Let's take a look in the front. We do have a pretty nice interior, in my opinion, here. The first thing that you're going to notice when you pop in here is the navigation system is different than what it is in the normal XCeed, because that is the Navigation Plus system, which is going to set you back around 1,190 euros. That's pretty exact, not just around. What it does, it increases the screen size up to 26 centimeters compared to the smaller one, which is around 16 or 20 centimeters. Don't judge me on that completely, but it's a nice little infotainment system. We'll look at that in a second. Down here we also have our climate controls, which is a 2-zone. Everything is standard, like I said. The only thing different in here is the navigation system. So this is still buttons, which I actually absolutely love, and there's a couple of things you can do. For instance, you can put the driver's only air conditioning on, which is nice, so it just completely eliminates the right side. There's heated seats, and there's also heated steering. One thing I love is heated steering is standard in the car, even with the smallest package for the Vision package. Down here we have our 7-gear automatic or 6-speed automatic gearbox, which comes in the Doppelkupplung Getriebe, which is also dual clutch system, which you have in here. You also don't have a physical handbrake. You do have just a little lever here, and 2 cup holders in here, one for a smaller cup and one for a bigger one. Up here you have a little bit of space, or pretty good space actually. You can probably fit a whole head in there. And then you have your EV, HEV, which just changes your modes. For instance, EV, you can go in full electric mode, and then HEV is it combines both of the motors together, and it syncs them up pretty nicely. On the dash, which is nice, you can also get that in full digital cockpit. This one does not have it, but on the left there's a small little difference with there's the charge, eco, and power. And one thing is when you go up to the eco and hit the power mode, the normal combustion engine is going to turn on. So that's one indicator of if you just want to stay in electric mode, you can just go in there and try not to hit the power mode if you kick down the gas pedal a little bit too much. The steering wheel, very nice. I do like the feeling of it and the fabric in it. A couple of customizable buttons in here, and also to just control your display up front. On the left side you do have your small assists and also your fuel cap, which you can press on, and it's going to open up the fuel cap in there, which I'm not the biggest fan of, because instead of just pressing on the outside, you always have to go in here, and if you forget it, you have to come back in because you can't do it from the outside. Not a thing I really like. Up here just your standard lights and also your mirror for the back. Down here we have some pretty nice seats. They're very comfortable. You can sit in there for a pretty decent time. And then you have all the adjustable stuff on the side as well. And the fabric in here is pretty nice. It does feel pretty good, apart from once you get lower, like the dash feels pretty good, but then you get lower, it's, well, it's still the same fabric, but it feels pretty nice in general. The other thing that we have is up here you have a nice little kind of LED display. Well, it's not an LED display, but it shows you your battery charge and what it's currently at, which is a nice little feature. I haven't seen that on too many cars. And that's right in front of another sound speaker, which there is 3 up there as well, which is nice. The one thing I really hate is your peripheral views. You can't really see anything out of this car. It's one of the worst cars I've seen when it comes to actually seeing outside. The rear window is okay, even though it seems pretty small, but just looking out the sides, you really can't see anything. It's not the best when it comes to that. But other than that, that is basically the interior, and let's take a look at the infotainment system. Afterwards, we'll go into the engine up front. Let's take a look at the infotainment system. There's a couple of nice key features that I'd like to look at. First of all, you have your basic navigation system in here, which you can search stuff, and it's well done. Then we have our map, which is pretty interactive. It actually processes pretty fast, which I'm a big fan of, so it doesn't lag much. So it goes pretty nicely in there. You go back with the home button up there, and then you can, well, that's the main menu. The other things you can do, there's, for instance, there is the quiet mode or the sleep mode, where the volume goes down to 7, and in the back there's normal volume, meaning everyone in the back can just take a nice little sleep in there as well. You can also do some voice recordings in there, or memos, which is a pretty cool thing, even though I don't think anybody's going to use that. And then there's some Kia Connect, which you can just connect with your phone and stuff like that. And then there's also some nice things. For instance, you can actually go and put some nature sounds in there, which is pretty interesting. For instance, now there's rain in here. I'm going to turn that up a little bit just so you can hear it. Driving along with beautiful weather outside, and then you just feel the rain hitting your skin. Absolutely wonderful. I don't know, it's just a nice little feature in there, but that's the basic gist of it. I'm a pretty big fan of the infotainment system. It's pretty nicely done, and there's also some shortcuts down here. You can put your volume in there, stuff like that. Press on it, it's going to turn it off. And then there's media, radio, and stuff like that. You can change everything in there. What do we have under the hood? We have the exact same engine that you're going to get in every single version. So the Platinum, the Vision, and the Spirit all have the same exact engine type, which is a 1.6 liter 4-cylinder engine producing 141 horsepower, which is going to catapult you from 0 to 100 in almost 10 seconds. So pretty fast there. The other thing that we have is well, you can see the main motor, and then you can also see the electric motor, which is on the right side with some nice fluid above it, which looks pretty nice. I think that's cooling fluid, if I'm not totally mistaken. The top speed of this is around 100, well, 200 almost. That is basically the front. There's nothing more to it. We do have a rear-wheel drive, and that is the complete gist of it. One thing I'm not a big fan of, though, is, well, I don't actually know how it's supposed to work, but you can't actually remove your, you can't remove those windshield wipers, because they just dodge against the front hood, which is stupid, because you have to press a button in there, get them up, go back outside, then remove them, flip them up, and that is just stupid. One thing I'm not a big fan of. Yeah. Ne? So what is my final verdict? In my opinion, it's a pretty decent car. It looks pretty decent. Kia obviously stepped forward a little bit when it comes to that. You have a pretty decent range when it comes to that, around 60 kilometers, and a very good fuel consumption. If you drive pretty sustainable at around 3 liters, you can even get it down to, well, Kia says 1.2 liters to 1.4. I don't drive like that, so that's not going to happen. But the interior is nice. You have you have a lot of standard features, which are very nice. The plug-in hybrid is very well integrated with the combustion engine. It's all very highly detailed and very well manufactured within the inside. You have a lot of space in there as well. And in general, it looks pretty nice. A couple of features I'm not a big fan of, or things that they could have changed, is, for instance, instead of front-wheel drive, you could have had all-wheel drive, because it is kind of an SUV-aimed car, obviously a crossover. But you do have like the off-road features, which you can add additionally, and also raise it by 2 centimeters. So all-wheel drive would have been nice, because most of the cars in that range also have an all-wheel drive function. The trunk is not the biggest. You don't have much space in there for it being kind of a crossover SUV kind of thing. The surrounding view when you're in the inside is horrible. One of the worst I've seen, which is not great. That is one feature that I'm not a big fan of, but in general I like it, and I think it's a good buy if you're looking for a car at that price range.